For elder, Ellen Nadelberg and Jessica Cleveland. For clerk, which is an elder position, Karen Wonders. And for deacon, Roger Vanden Bogard and Rebecca Schaefer. Ballots were collected. Thanks were offered to retiring elders and deacons. Werner Schroeder reviewed the CEAF and Barnabas Foundation giving options. Milt announced that ballots had been counted and all the elders and deacons and the budget were approved. Milt provided an update on council action, including the council retreat, the Emerson House replacement, the denominational HSR report, and the MPC position. Milt closed the meeting in prayer and the meeting was adjourned. Following that, there was an email vote on the CEF funding, which is properly supposed to be in the congregational meeting, so we'll do that today, but that was approved as a later email. So council officially approves those minutes, so there's no action here, there's read here for your information. So next on the agenda is elder deacon nominees. Ballots will be handed out, so you'll find, yep, go ahead. Elder deacon nominees on there for ratification. You'll find the line item for the budget and for CEAF funding. So those three things. So we're going to wait until after the budget and CEAF funding information to collect those ballots. So as soon as those presentations are done, if you'd pass those, mark them and pass them to the edge aisles, and we'll get those counted with the intent we have a result before the end of the meeting that we can announce to you. So if you are missing a ballot after the passing goes out, or you need a pen or a pencil to mark those, just raise your hand and one of the council members will help you out with that. So as you may have noted in the connections, we're going to move next year from 6 grow groups to 5 grow groups, and that also means we're moving from 6 elders and 6 deacons to 5 of each. So just keep your eye out from that. Those specific grow group assignments will be coming out in probably July, a little later this summer, and you can find out which group you'll be in and who the elder and deacon are for your group. Those will again be geographic in nature by intent, so you're kind of gathering with the people around you. So those that are up, we have 1 elder for ratification, that's Troy Newcomb, and that'll be a 3-year term. And then we have 2 deacons for ratification, Pam Zeiderveen for a 3-year term, and we'll take this opportunity to thank Pam for filling out the remainder of the term, a bit less than a year, for Davinia Lyon, who moved away from here. So she has a little practice, so now she'll move into an official 3-year term based on the ratification. And then Nancy Mast has agreed to have her name up for a 2-year term to fill out the balance of the term following Roger Vanden Bogard's resignation. So that'll be a 2-year term for Nancy. The clerk position that we have, which is officially an elder position, to fill out the balance of the term following Karen Wonder's resignation, is open yet. That hasn't been filled, so that'll be a matter of business coming up in the next couple of months to get that filled. We'd like to sincerely thank the retiring council members for their 3 years of service. That's Will Jensen and myself as elders, and Jill Newcomb as deacon. So thanks. It feels odd to thank yourself, but at least thanks to Will and Jill. All right. Next up on the agenda is the budget for the 2023 church year. So our budget starts at the beginning of August. So it'll start at the beginning of August this year, and it runs through the end of July 2024 to give you a sense of our fiscal year. Kyle Vanando, who is our church treasurer and has agreed to serve another year for us, happens to be out of town. So Russ, our church accountant, has agreed to make the summary presentation of the budget. So you're up, Russ.
Yep, it works. Right, so finally we get to the part I know you're all looking forward to so much. We're going to put a whole bunch of numbers up on the screen. I'm planning not to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just want to point out a few things because the church is probably seeing some of the same things in its spending as you're seeing in your own households. So start with this first slide. Let's just remind ourselves why it is we even put a budget together, and it's because of our mission statement of our church here. We are a family of God, living our faith and growing by joyfully surrendering to Jesus, freely sharing our lives, and in humbly embracing the hurting. I think as you go through this, you'll see how we target certain things to that mission statement. So next slide, please. Okay, so we kind of divide the administration of the church up into two buckets. This is what we call the general administration. Most of these things are wishes, right? So very few of these things are mandated that we budget this. Most of this is stuff that we get from the staff and the volunteers that help with our programs. So you can see very little change here, actually, year on year. The center column is last year, the left column is this year. But the only thing that's really going up a whole lot is the banking fees, and that is a direct result of the activity we have now with online giving. So there's a small transaction charge for every online gift that comes in, and that's a pretty small price to pay for all the money that comes in. We're over on the gas and electric at the Emerson House, at the church, and then the church insurance looks like a 53% increase. It's 53% budget on budget. So we budgeted $27,000 last year. The renewal actually came in at about $33,000. And in talking with our agent this year, he said expect another 20% or so for next year. So we're budgeting $41,000 for the church's insurance. That is the section of the budget that got hit the hardest. Next slide, please. So here we go, the freely sharing our lives. And you can see we've rearranged some things. Cadets are down to 0 this year. GEMS are down to 0. They got rolled into our weeknight ministries category. Well, you can see here there's some pluses and some minuses. We get to the next page, you can see the total. So next slide, please. So you can see it's going down about $3,000, 16%. Most of that on weeknight ministries. So last year we budgeted almost nothing for weeknight ministries. This year we're budgeting $1,500 for Connect and $100 for the Kids Club, but that compares, I'm sorry, $1,000 for the Kids Clubs, but that compares with the $4,000 for GEMS and Cadets that was in last year's budget. So that pretty much handles that adjustment. Next slide. Out, humbly embracing. So again, just a little bit of decreases here. Ministry development, which is funds we use for new programs. We've got the Enfold thing going, so we'd used some of that money in the past for that. And so that we're reducing that to only $500 this year. The rest basically stays the same. Enfold, we're moving from a $3,000 budget to a $2,000 because we've pretty well got the house set up now and stuff. So you can see there about a 22% decrease in the out category. Next slide. Support ministries. So this is kind of the behind the scenes stuff. There's everything is about the same there except the website. Website is going from $500 this year to $2,000 next year. There is some, I'm not familiar with the details, but I know there's something in the works to catch our website up with the newest technology. Facility stays exactly the same. In hospitality, it goes up just slightly. Next slide. Supporting the Church Universal. So ministry shares. You can the denomination changed their philosophy on ministry shares a couple of years ago. It used to be a suggestion of X number of dollars per family per year. And they changed that to a pledge system about 3 years ago. And would send a letter out to the churches and ask for a certain size pledge. So this year, I think it was mostly driven by the deacons and the council said, we have a lot fewer, not a lot fewer, but we have fewer members now than we had before. When we first introduced the pledge system, we were at like 156. and I think we're down under 120 or so now. So we're reducing our pledge from 40,000 this year to almost 28,000 next year. The other half of that is back in the old days when they had the the per family per year, there was a provision in the actual documents from CRC that based on the distance your church was from Grand Rapids, you could reduce the amount that you were paying directly to Grand Rapids and divert some of that money to Dort. So this had to do with Calvin College. And it said, if the further you are from Grand Rapids, the lower the chances are that your kids are going to go to Calvin. So you can divert some of your ministry shares to Dort. And so we had always done that. And so even after they went to the pledge system, historically it was about a 17% diversion. So the last few years we've continued to do that. I think a decision has been made. We're not going to do that this year. And then the rest of it is staying about the same. So you can see that's going down by just about $15,000 or 15%. Next slide. And there's our staff. Nice family pictures. Next slide. Because what we really want to talk about is how much are we paying our staff. Excuse me. So based on the recommendation of the HR committee, the council has decided on a 6% increase this year, trying to recognize how much inflation has been running away from us the last year and a half. So you look at that and it looks a little confusing. So we'll look at the ministry of the word and it looks like it's going down 16%, but his housing allowance is going up 46, 47%. So we treat our pastors as, we base the 6% on total income. So total income is both their salary and the housing allowance that the church pays them. And Joel has received permission from the council to raise his housing allowance fairly significantly, which makes it look like his salary is going down, but his paycheck is staying exactly the same size, and will go up by 6% in August, as will Brett's. But Brett has not changed his housing allowance at all, so it looks like he's getting a 9% raise. Well, he's not. He's getting a 6% raise, as are all the rest of the staff. Next slide. The total wages and benefits are going up 4.8%. Now, why is that if everybody's getting a 6% raise? Well, that's not all that's in that category. There's allowances, expense allowances, book allowance, travel allowance, workers' compensation insurance. So there's a bunch of other things in there. So the staff is all getting a 6% raise, but our total wages and benefits are only going up by 4.8. Next slide. And then up, joyfully surrendering. So our worship stuff is basically going up about $800. Some of that in the copyright fees. I'm trying to remember where else was that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and worship visuals. Beautiful job behind us here today. I was really impressed when I walked in this morning, but yeah, not sure who's responsible for that, but it's really nice. So overall grand total for the budget is $616,771, which is a 3% increase from last year. However, next slide. You can find that number again under total, that's 616. However, this year we're anticipating a little more rental income. So in the 23, well, that center column is not labeled correctly. That should say 22-23. We had $9,600 of rental income in the budget. It was basically the rental for the Emerson House. This year, we're changing the program slightly for the Enfold group, and so we're looking for $250 a month from our Enfold participants. So we have budgeted $12,000 for a rental income this year from them, plus the other $96 for the Emerson House, assuming we get that rented again. And so you can see that's money that doesn't have to come in through member giving. That's income to the church. So our total member giving needed is $595,000 as compared to $588 this year. which is just over a 1% increase. So that's where we settled down, 1.13% increase over the 22-23 budget. So who has the first question? That is correct. Yeah, I can't speak to that, Marge. You know, maybe the deacons want to talk to that?
The conversation that came around that was that from Dordt College's perspective, there's a lot of folks that are pretty passionate about Dordt College. The question was, does it need to be a part of the overall giving general fund? And the answer that came back was, you know, those that are passionate would certainly have the opportunity to continue to give on their own. But in order to be fiscally responsible, this was an area we felt like we could make a compromise.
Who has the next question? Okay, fine. Who has the last question? Oh, there we go. Simon. Yeah, it's income to the church. Call it what you want. It's you know, it's an expectation. I don't think anybody's going to be tracking anything, but my understanding is it's an expectation. And it's not I don't think it's a donation to the church. That's kind of for Kyle and the deacons to work out. I don't think that's a you know, tax deductible thing. It affects the rental license. Works for me. Okay. Yeah, we have to, well, in order to qualify for a property tax exemption, we have to make sure that we use that house in support of our mission. And I think that we can make a pretty strong case that this is in support of our mission. Yeah, no, it's not UBI. Okay, Milt, back to you.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate that. Next up is Warner. He has a few short things to go through, the CEAF funding and a quick look at the giving summary and a couple other comments. So, and after that is done, then please mark, if you haven't already, in your budget or your ballots and pass those over to the aisle.
Roger that. I understand that I'm the last thing between you and lunch. Okay, I'm almost the last thing between you and lunch. Recognizing that, those of you that are gluten-free, I promise you lunch is gluten-free if you choose not to take a bun. It's actually pulled pork, it's not hamburgers, just so you know. That way you're not surprised when you get out there, and let's just say that Joel didn't get the update. It's not his fault. Next slide, please. So CEAF, a lot of you folks are familiar with CEAF. What we post here is the information about how we transition to the following year. Last year's numbers were about 90,000-ish, just a touch over that. It has been fully funded, I believe, through this.
It's roughly $6,000 that we need by the end of June in order to break even for the year.
Okay, thank you. So we're very close to breaking even for the year. So the June payment was made. This also goes 10 months, right? This is not 12 months? No, it's 12. It's 12? Okay. Sorry, I'm learning. The new guy card.
The church is 12, to individual families
it's 10. Okay, that's why I was thinking that. That's okay. So again, we follow the budget of, we follow the fiscal year budget. So this is again August of 23 through the forecast of the end of school year 24. Some data points I want to bring forward. We've had some reduction in family participation. That's both good and bad. Let's talk about the good. The good is that Denver Christian, which currently is the only school where we have children attending for Christian Day School, has been more generous with their financial aid packages. And that has enabled several families to be able to step away and say, no, we can take care of this given the additional generous aid, which is really outstanding. And second, we have had a couple of families turn over. One family just left because of a job change, and so that was just another impact to the number of families that are participating. One other note, you probably think, well, gosh, if we have 9 to 4, why is the number still so high? We've got 1 or 2 families that are bringing in more children, which is a good thing. So that's the really simple thing here. It's about a $15,000 delta. Again, this is a separate line item from the general fund. So please make sure you understand that in your vote. Last thing we'd like to point out, it is called the Christian Education Assistance Fund, meaning we help families. We don't pay for the whole thing. We can help up to 80% of the total bill. We ask for families to really look hard at what they're willing to take care of themselves. So this is just a good number to show you that 74,584 is about 65% of the total amount of what the whole amount is to pay for tuition for those kids to go to Christian day school. So it's not the full 80%. Folks are really stepping and doing their part. That's the answer. Any questions on this before I move forward? Okay, next slide. The deacons asked for Kyle. This is all Kyle Van Endel's work. Y'all got one of these, and hopefully I think you had it electronically as well as physically. Pretty passionate about this document. And I say that because when I look at, when I first saw this document and it was published, it helped me really identify where am I at in one of these people or one of these family households giving to the general fund and to the congregation and all the work that's being done. So hopefully you had a chance to look at it. I think some key takeaways are, one, the deacons are not going to chase you, right? This is to give you awareness, transparency, help you understand where the giving apportionments fall, right? With the number of families. I think it's remarkable that half of our 22 budget came from 14 families. That's an extraordinary blessing, but it's an extraordinary burden. It's one that God has been so faithful with how he has continued to meet our budget, and that's a gift. What I will say is that I'm really, what is of note as well is, if you go to the next slide, sorry. On the left-hand side, it shows about the number of families of the breakout in different divisions of overall giving buckets. And I find it remarkable how God has provided through every single family, through every single person's means, as they are able. We still meet the budget, whether it's slightly underrunning because we're not quite there, or it's simply folks giving an extra little effort. So how can I take action? Again, ways to give, right? So online, clearly that's been very helpful for us. You can text things through 84321. You can send checks to churches, you're aware. You can also send them by mail, and I'm just going to throw one other out. Something I help with my dad. I help with his finances because he's 82, and we don't like him writing checks to the wrong people, which has happened. So what we like to do, bill pay, right? So we set up a bill pay. It's in there. It's to the church. It's to the address. They send a check. He absolutely gets his apportionment that he wants sent to his church, and he does that faithfully, and it's on time, and it's like clockwork. So just another thing to think about. Any questions on the giving analysis? Okay, last thing I'm going to plug is Barnabas Fund. I touched base on this last time. I got in trouble for showing tax numbers, so I did not throw a slide up here. Please remember that there are options for this congregation to give non-cash gifts. And what that means through like stock, appreciated stock, or even homes, or if you're in the farming business, you can give grain. Barnabas has quite an incredible set of options for you to be able to give through non-cash means, and that could be through an IRA, it could be through a regular cash account where you're holding stock, or even mutual funds, or whatever the case may be. And the tax advantage, of course, is according to your tax situation, but typically the church will benefit much more from not getting, well, they will get the same amount, but ultimately, if you were to sell stock, you'll likely take a tax hit and have to pay for that. Whereas if you simply give it to the church, you'll get the full donation amount, and the church will receive the full amount. So there's some really great things. Talk to me. I know Russ is familiar with it as well. If you have any questions, please come and talk. So thank you.
Thanks, Werner. Appreciate that information. we would like the opportunity with all of you here just to share some thoughts. So Pastor Joel is going to share some thoughts on a few things, and then I'll pop in after that with a few things from the council. So, but this is the time we want to pass in those ballots. While these reports are going on, they're going to count them, and ideally by the time the reports are done, we'll have a count ready to present to you. So Joel, go ahead.
Maybe the wrong group for Harry Potter reference, but I started re-listening to Harry Potter yesterday, and 4 of you are going to get this, but I'm on this path and I'm going to continue it. So there's a moment they get to Hogwarts and they're having their first meal at the school, and the head of the school stands up and he says, "Before we eat, I'm going to say a few words. Fizzbert, Fiddlebybort, Thirtsk." And then he sits down. And I thought maybe I should see, no one, my daughter would have been here, she would have liked it. So I won't do that. I'll say a few more words than that. I've been asked to give kind of a state of the church address to you. Not an address, that sounds way too formal, but it just made some of you really worried how long you're going to be here. Just about what's been going on and what we're looking ahead to the next year. So I think it's been a year full of full of challenges, but also full of God's goodness. I'd say would be the short version of that. As we said this morning, we've had to say goodbye to some people, and that's been hard. But we've also said hello to some people, and that's been wonderful and a gift. I think we're trying to figure out what a new normal is. Maybe we're trying to reset some patterns after coming out of the pandemic, and maybe relearn some things. There's been some opportunity for that. So this past year, the way we've been trying to work our planning process is in the spring, we have a council retreat when we talk together about this vision documents that we have, and we say, so what specifically might God be calling to us to focus on in the next year? Where specifically might He be asking us to focus? Because there's always more than we can do in a single year. So what priority are we going to set? And so last year, April of 2022, we met together and looked at that vision statement and some of the documents we have, and we felt God calling us as a council to say we want to lean this coming ministry year into what it means for us to be an unlikely family. So hopefully that's language you've heard at some point. And there's a reason for that. We want to lean into this, and especially in the relationships within First CRC. So we drew up a ministry plan last summer, and we set out the goal. I still have this kind of scrawled up on my whiteboard in my office, that at the end of the year, everyone in this church would have a story of an unlikely connection that they made at First CRC. And everyone would be able to say, I've got a relationship with this person, not because we necessarily have so much in common or because we would have just naturally been together, but because we are a part of the same family of God at First CRC. So that was our goal. And I guess in some ways it's up to you to determine how successful we were in that goal, to think about if you have those stories or not. I hope you do. But as a staff and as a council, we did do our best to provide opportunities to foster those relationships and to create space for them to happen. So I think a big success of this last year was restarting Wednesday night programming, kind of renaming that and rebranding it under calling it Connect Night, and programs for our kids, but also Colossian Forum groups meeting there, table talks, chances just to eat together and to be together. It was a great start to that. At a Sunday school class, talking throughout the year, talking about how we can extend God's love and care to those who may experience life on the margins because of their sexual identity. We look forward to breaking bread gatherings this summer. That's, again, growing out of that vision to be an unlikely family. And also, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but welcomed our first group of Enfold participants, which I think has just been really wonderful and a blessing. So I've been trying to take those intentional steps and create space for those relationships. And I think we still have room to grow. We will always have room to grow, but I think we still have room to grow. So as we look forward to the coming year, council sense and staff alongside them that maybe time to we might just need to keep leaning into this area of being an unlikely family, but we want to do that with a slight pivot. And the pivot would be, whereas this year we've talked a lot about the relationships with people who are already here, right? Like, can you just learn the names? Can we just try to take the opportunity to learn the names of people whose names we feel like we should know, but we don't know, and we're embarrassed to ask? Like, could we do that? That would be a good thing to do, by the way, over lunch. But this coming year, we don't want to just do and be like thinking about how do we cultivate relationships within our family, but how do we grow our family? How do we look out and say, how can we invite and welcome people into this family who may not yet be here, who haven't yet found their place? So that's our big goal, really, is to practice invitation and hospitality and welcome, and to create a culture of welcome. I want to talk to you a little bit about specific steps, but the overall goal is the culture and character of our congregation, right? That we want to truly live into this sense that this is a welcoming place and a place where people can find home and family and relationship through Jesus Christ. So we've got a long list of things. I'm not going to run through all of them, but I'll just say some of these things are kind of under the hood adjustments that happen more at the staff level, like just what's our process for welcoming people? Do we have specific steps we need to follow up on, those sorts of things that you might not notice specifically, and you certainly don't want to be bored with on the details, I'm guessing. But there might be other more concrete changes too. Little things like we are hoping in the next month or two that there are going to be some benches that appear out front, where not only we can sit on Sunday mornings, but where our neighborhood can get the subtle message, like, you are welcome to sit here and rest. Like, this is a place for you. Just a little thing. We've talked too, based on some of the survey feedback we got for this winter, about developing on-ramps and entry points into the life of First CRC. What does especially our adult education and discipleship opportunities look like? How do people know what's there and how they can actually come in and make it easy for people who are new to First CRC to find a spot in relationship and community and place to grow? And a big thing we want to do is practice. We want to practice our hospitality muscles. We think maybe, as a council, we've gotten a bit rusty at that over, we spent these 2 years of the pandemic kind of being like, stay away, people, scary. But we've had this reputation of being a hospitable and welcoming and friendly church, but we don't want to just rest on that. We want to make sure that we're doing all we can to genuinely step into that. And so doing that in a couple of ways. One is continuing with Family Promise. That's a concentrated and obvious way that we do that. So Family Promise, where we welcome in homeless families for 2 weeks at a time, twice a year. But a big piece for us, we sensed God calling us to step more deeply into our Unfold program. Again, you've heard mention of this a little bit, but this is where we welcome in a crew of young adults to come and be a part of this congregation and say, how can we support you and love you and encourage you as you find your place and transition into maybe into new life in Denver and new life in this church? How can we be a community for you? We think we had a good start to this year, but we think there's a lot of growth. And one of the areas of growth is that we think this is something we want our whole congregation to take ownership in, right? When we say unfold, y'all are the ones who are doing the unfolding, right? And so we want to look at how can this just be a place where we practice those hospitality muscles with these young women, in this case this year. We're welcoming 2 new ones, by the way, this week. So I guess I am going to put you on the spot because you're here. Avery, can you wave? Avery has arrived. Sophia is arriving on Friday. Doesn't know a soul in Denver. Please unfold her, right? Please watch out for her on Sunday mornings. But we want to do this, and again, I just want to reiterate, this is a way we practice the gospel, right? This is a way we practice the gospel as the people of God. It's a way we practice gospel hospitality. It's a way we follow Jesus and say, how can we not just cling to our lives and our resources, but how can we lay them down for the good of others? And I think the dream of this program is this is a mission, okay? And one of the things I became really convicted of as I was doing my doctoral project research last summer is just the need for this sort of thing. Because if you look at the statistics on church engagement in general, but especially the church engagement of young adults, and not just the church engagement, but the faith engagement of young adults, they're not encouraging, all right? So this is a way for us to say, how can we make some small ding in that, hopefully? How can we help people who may or may not find a place in a church, in a new community, because that's a really hard and difficult thing to do, right? To show up in a city, and some of you remember church shopping. It's not fun, A lot of people just rather not do it. So how can we make that easy and say, we want to support you and encourage you and help you find your place? This is about mission too. That's where I'm trying to say there. So that's one place we're going to practice. Generally speaking, our sense as council and staff, again, survey feedback is we're stretched pretty thin as a congregation right now. We've got some people who are volunteering a lot and some people who could maybe stand to step up a little bit, but we're kind of doing what we can do. So it's not the, just saw someone throw an elbow. Sorry. That wasn't directed at anyone. But our sense is like, this is not the time for us to try to add 7 new things. Again, it's not that time for that anxious busyness, right? It's more to say, how do we lean in to what God has already put in front of us and try to do what God has called us to do well and grow in that capacity for love and hospitality and welcome. That said, one little new initiative or relationship we're excited about is we got to know the folks at Community Ministry Food Bank, which is over on just I don't know, a mile or so on Federal, Evans-ish, that area. And we've already had a few partnerships there with our middle and high school youth groups, and we're just looking at how we might continue to cultivate and grow that. But again, the big thing is how can we be an unlikely family, and how do we practice that? So just this is one of the things we said is we're going to say it a lot, so I'm going to say it here today. You know, even over lunch today, just step out and say, you know, I see you here every day or every Sunday, and I'm sorry I don't know your name. It's okay, right? It's okay. Let me offer mine because maybe you forgot it, and let me ask yours, and like just don't go right to your own group right away. Just give it 2 minutes to maybe get to know some people. That's the kind of thing we're hoping to do this year. All right? I think I've said more than my few words. So.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate that challenge and information. Just a couple of things to wrap it up that I'd like to go over. Those are a short update on the Emerson House replacement, and just some comments on the HSR, the Human Sexuality Report issue, and then the survey that you took recently, and then we'll wrap things up. So just a bit more patience. If you're growling, so am I. So here we go. First off, about the Emerson House. If you recall, last year we did a bit of a study on what it might mean to replace the Emerson House, and the council intentionally set that aside for a little while to look at some other things, and has really felt recently that it would be good to update that to deepen the feasibility study of how we might use that and how could it be an asset to our ministry here, and take a look at what would be the next steps if we moved ahead. So that further feasibility study work has just started. So there is no updated report today. That's just very recently begun again. But expect something probably sometime a little later this year, updating you on where that feasibility report may be leading us and what council's thoughts are to share with you. The next item to go over was the HSR, the Human Sexuality Report, has been a topic of discussion in the council and the church for some time now, and was a subject of consideration in the CRC Senate essentially a year ago, and now will be there'll be some further consideration of that in this coming week, as Senate I think just started Friday of this week and continues on through next week. So what I'd like to do is read some comments from the council, just to keep people updated on that issue. The council, first CRC, wanted to summarize some thoughts which have been shared by various means with the congregation over the past year in regards to the Human Sexuality Report, or HSR. In June of last year, delegates from various Christian Reformed churches across the U.S. and Canada met for the General Assembly meeting, or Synod. 3 motions were discussed and voted on in regards to the HR. The first accepted the Human Sexuality Report, which among other issues confirmed the CRC's previous position that homosexual sex is inconsistent with Scripture. The second was a recommendation that declared that this position is taught in the church confessions. The third motion about footnoting the Heidelberg Catechism related to that issue did not pass. The first 2 affirmative votes mean the decision is binding on those who serve as elder or deacon or on confessing members. This decision has caused great pain and division within the denomination, including our home here at First CRC. Our community at First CRC cares deeply about this decision, both for and against the recommendation, and these differences are reflected in the council. And this is bolded in here. In spite of differences of opinion on this issue, the council has chosen to continue to work together as one body for the good of First CRC. We strive to be a welcoming community for all of God's children, and we continue to consider how we best carry that out. We as a council want to acknowledge the sorrow and grief that many are experiencing. We are brokenhearted to say goodbye to families and longtime members that have ministered so faithfully here. We fully trust in God's sovereignty through this process and pray for strength and guidance for our brothers and sisters as they search for a different church family. Several months ago, our church submitted an overture to Synod to be reviewed at the upcoming Jude Synod meeting, asking that the second of the affirmative votes passed at Synod last year on the confessional status be dropped, as has our Rocky Mountain classes and several other classes within the CRC denomination. The intent is to allow for some space for disagreement as we continue to work together toward unity in how we minister. Though we are unsure at this point about the outcome of Synod and our next steps as a congregation, we ask that you join us in praying for wisdom and discernment. And together, we rest in this knowledge that comes from Colossians 1. Christ is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church, and through him all things are reconciled, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. So these thoughts will be in a link in the connections next week if you'd like to read them anymore or review them in that depth. The last thing I wanted to go over today is the survey. The council would like to thank you again for your participation in the survey that was distributed earlier. The feedback from the 104 responses we received helps us know how the First CRC members are thinking and feeling, and identifies areas to be addressed for growth and where there are possible opportunities for us. It was good to see that people feel cared for here at First Church and that various programs are really valued. Some of the concerns that stated were about worship, the human sexuality report, the need to equip volunteers, along with some other comments that have helped us confirm and see issues that should be addressed. Other feedback is that our intergenerational family here, our worship, ministries, programs, and preaching are important aspects that help people grow in their relationship with the Lord. Our challenge to you, as Joel kind of challenged you a bit ago, is to consider participation in particular leadership in various ways. We realize that may push some of you out of your comfort zone, but it would be really beneficial to the church in some ways you might serve. So the challenge I leave with you is we need all of you in some way to help us become the body that Jesus wants us to be. And I think dwelling on the sermon as part of that waiting, I think that waiting involves prayer and thought about what that might be. So I'll challenge you along with Joel. Wait, pray, and think about where God might be leading you to be a part of the family, whether it's leadership, participation, or whatever it might be. So thanks again for being part of that survey and getting that feedback to us. In regards to the voting results, all the items passed, some unanimously and some by a very large margin. So elders and deacons have all been ratified, as has the budget and the CEAF. So let's conclude the meeting with prayer. I'll start that with the Lord, a short prayer, and then if you would join me on the Lord's Prayer. And then we'll head outdoors? Outdoors. All right. Here we go. Let's pray. Dear Father, thank you for this time. Bind us together as your people. Grant us wisdom and strength to carry on your mission here at First CRC. We love you. Bless our food and our time together after this meeting, and let's pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. All right, the meeting is officially adjourned, and enjoy lunch and fellowship.